Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be able to go and join me today. It's always just a lot of fun to be able to go and I think share knowledge, being able to go and share what I know, and hopefully, you'll be able to learn a little bit of one thing or two. And if anything, I'm also going to go through about Project Apex, this new group project management leadership program that I'm starting up. And in the end, I'll also open it up for question and answers, whether it's about emotional intelligence or whether it's about the program. Happy to go and answer it all. But if anything, I hope that today we'll be able to learn a thing or two and hopefully keep us entertained as we go. It will be a little bit interactive in that you can go and type things into the chat if you can. If you're driving, don't worry about it. I don't expect you to go and type anything, but this will be interactive. So we're going to have a little bit of fun here where we're going to talk about emotional damage to emotional intelligence and looking at how we as project leaders can build our emotional intelligence for better leadership. Now, if you haven't met me, that's okay. My name is Ben. I'm a project management leadership success coach. And really, that's helping more project managers be able to be more successful in where they're at, in really moving people from being stressed out, being overwhelmed by their project as project managers, and moving them into a space where they are confident, strategic, resilient project leaders. I also still do project management consulting, as well as an international PM leadership speaker, where I've spoken at PMI chapters across the world. I'm a mentor for the Canadian Centre for Advanced Leadership. I have a few certifications and designations here around the PMP, PMOCP, Certified Management Consulting, a professional engineer, and Agile Scrum Master. There's probably a few others I'm going to be adding on here throughout the year. And actually, I just found out I'm one of the top 100 PM creators worldwide in the English speaking world for LinkedIn. So that has been really exciting. I had no idea, nothing I applied for, but that was a really great surprise last week. I'm also an entrepreneur and podcaster. So my podcast is the Organized Chaos Cafe, where I just love being able to go and bring people together to share their stories, find little intricate ways we can get people to understand leadership. And maybe it's from very different areas, like whether it's a Marvel comic book artist, a Canadian barbecue pit master, or maybe it's from a Michelin star event planner. Who knows? A lot of different areas. And I'm also a bit of a comic book nerd. And if I make a few jokes, well, I'm dabble a little bit inside of stand-up comedy as well. So we're going to hopefully have a lot of fun time here. And yeah, I'm also a peer management alliance, peer project management instructor, where I've helped to build out that program with a number of amazing other creators as well. So thank you so much for that reminder, Mark.
You're
But
welcome.
yeah, no problem. Hopefully today, what I want to be able to go through for us is understanding why emotional intelligence is important, understand why emotional intelligence is so hard, and hopefully enable us to understand your EQ a little bit more. Emotional intelligence being EQ. So, first of all, what is emotional intelligence? It sounds like it might be something very easily defined, but we'll go and take a look at the dictionary definition here, right? The capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. That's what the Oxford Dictionary says. If I boil it down, the way that I think about it is its ability to understand your own emotions, understand the other people's emotions, and take actions that are based on this understanding. And if we look at why emotional intelligence is important, well, from a benefit perspective, we have a lot of good personal benefits, right? It can help drive more self awareness as well as self regulations, being able to understand your emotions, impulses, and reactions, especially inside of stressful situations, because this is where it makes the biggest difference. There's stress management as well as decision making, being able to make balanced decisions, because you hear all the time, oh, don't make your decisions emotionally, right? So, what does that exactly mean? And even from the professional perspective, you have areas where it empowers your leadership, your teamwork, your conflict resolution, and adaptability, your ability to be able to go and change despite adversity while leading your team, helping them to go and build that cohesive team. And if they're not, being able to resolve those conflicts that might come up. And from a social benefit perspective, it allows you to develop your bigger capacity, a stronger capacity for understanding other people's feelings, how they feel. And ultimately, that allows us to communicate better and build stronger relationships. So, you're all following me here. If you're all good with that so far, put a +1 into the chat. Now, what is the cost of poor leadership and, and emotional intelligence? What does that cost? Well, here's some statistics. So 7% of total organizational revenue on average is being lost. 630 billion per year for US companies, an 11% drop in global GDP. And you know what? That number is probably going up. When we look at some of the other emotions that people might feel and how that might impact their performance, right? We have poor team morale, lowering team performance. You have team silence. And what does that mean? They're probably communicating a lot less. And that means missed opportunities, overlooked risks and issues, loss of respect. And of course, if you lose respect for someone, that's probably going to impact their reputation as well. There's so many things that are going on within that space that if you're exhibiting poor emotional intelligence, you might not realize it, but others, they'll see that impact. And so I'd love to go and ask you, what has been your experience with poor emotional intelligence? Right? You can feel free to go and add it into your chat here, or if you want to, raise your hand and come off mute. Feel free to go and share your stories because I think all of us have a few stories, nightmares, scars, whatever it might be from poor emotional intelligence, right? I mean, for me, just seeing somebody that has been where you see someone being tested on perhaps what they think and maybe what they think isn't right, they lash out, they yell at you, they start gossiping, all those sort of areas, right? Yeah, they that you show that up inside of micromanagement, right? Things that are blown out of proportion, making a mountain out of that anthill, right? Yeah, we can definitely see a lot of those type of behaviors. And I'll tell you, and I'm not afraid to admit, even I have sometimes had poor emotional intelligence in certain situations when some things get triggered. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. All right. So as we continue on, I know there's the EQ has that buzzword, right? Emotional intelligence. I know everyone seems to go and talk about it, but why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for us to have good emotional intelligence, especially when we are in challenging situations, when they're super stressed? And the funny thing is, there's a lot of literature out there on what good leadership looks like, right? I mean, there's so many self-development books, there's so many leadership books, there's a whole industry built around leadership. Heck, I'm even part of it. But we still mess up. We still sometimes get into those situations where we react quickly and we wonder, why is this so hard? Why couldn't I control myself in that situation? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So, if we look at this, it all starts a little bit with how our brains are wired, how they're all put together. And so, when we look at our brains, our first part is we're going to divide into three spots. The first part is the brainstem. It's the part that keeps you alive. It's your automatic responses for vital functions, your breathing, your heart beating, right? All of those things you don't really think about. I mean, sure, you can control your breathing, and those can be ways that you can control some of your emotional intelligence, but you don't think about making your heart beat. You don't necessarily think about your breathing all the time to keep yourself breathing, right? All of those areas. So your brainstem is there to keep you alive. And when we look at the limbic system, this is the next oldest system where it's the things that keep you safe, to keep you alive in terms of working with your emotions, your memory, your arousal, things like hunger, right? We'll talk a little bit about those emotional states that come out of the limbic system. And when we look at the neocortex or the prefrontal cortex, that's your executive state. These are the things that you think about: sensation, action, where you think about your actions, cognition, consciousness. But when we talk about emotional intelligence, here's where a lot of our mind is at, is it sits right here in that emotional state, that limbic system where you're keeping you safe. People like to sometimes call it the lizard brain, right? So this is where when we have our perceived threats or dangers that trigger our limbic system, you've probably heard of this before, where there's the flight, fight, freeze, and even the fawn response for something that you have a strong emotional reaction to, right? Where you might want to go and run away or fight. You get into an argument, you yell, freeze, you do absolutely nothing. And how many of you have heard of fawn? If you've heard of fawn before, you can put a, I don't know, give me a thumbs up inside of the reactions here. Because fawn is an interesting one. And it's actually driven by the need to just kind of be able to appease the other party and make hopefully that problem goes away. And where you see that kind of behavior is with people pleasing behavior, where maybe they don't really intend to go and do it, or they're just going to take it on and be able to do it all the time, right? And you'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll do whatever you want so I can make you go away. I can make the problem go away. And that's what the fawning behavior is. So when we look at all of these things drive down into the emotions. The emotions of that will then drive either an equal and opposite reaction, or it can drive a thoughtful action. But what are we going to do about all these emotions, right? How are we going to look through all of them? And so I think some of the misconceptions around emotional intelligence is that some people say, well, I need to ignore the emotions, I need to make them go away. But EQ is not about the absence of emotions, it's how we control them. So when we look at what we're going to do about all of these different emotions that are going to come about, is that ultimately we want to be able to control and manage these emotions so that we can take the best course of action relative to the situation that we're going to be thrown into, right? Or that has been brought forward to us. And usually you don't really have to think about emotional intelligence when everything's going fine, when everything's fun, right? It's when it gets hard that our emotional intelligence really has to shine. So I'm going to give us hopefully a structure here, a simple, easy structure that we can help follow to understand how we can go and work through our emotional intelligence. And the first one for any leader, I always say, is self-awareness. It always has to start with self-awareness. Then we go into detection. What are we feeling? Do we understand how we feel? And the last part here is action. So here's the funny thing, right? When something really challenging comes along, our default path is, well, we're not going to think about our self-awareness. We don't got time for that. We don't detect. And instead, we just move straight to reaction. We're just so angry, right? Because it feels easier for us to sometimes just yell and scream and fight or run, right? Because one, it feels safe for us and therefore it feels good. And it also sometimes feels like that is the shorter path of resistance. If I do what I feel comes naturally to me, it feels like, well, then it'll get resolved a lot faster. But if you think about how much time overall that the conflict resolution takes, being able to manage the situation in an appropriate manner, it probably takes you a lot more time. And it takes a lot more time to listen to what the other party is talking about, to be able to empathize. It feels like it takes longer. But if you look at the total length of the conflict, it is actually being in a reactive state can actually make your path of resistance much longer in the long run. So we're going to talk about self-awareness first. And the first two are going to be the ones that we're going to focus on. And our first one here is around your emotional history. So, do you know why you feel certain emotions in certain situations? Do you understand that? And this is going to be for you. You can write it down by yourself, or if you have a notebook, feel free to go and write this down, right? But what are the things that have triggered you or have built up a history within yourself that you feel certain emotions? And here's the thing, everyone is different. And this is why it's difficult to just say, well, here's that formula you need to go and follow. Because people, maybe they're triggered by something around their beliefs and values. They're contrary to something that you believe, right? What are those beliefs and values that you have? Maybe if you value something like honesty and someone lies to you, that can be pretty triggering. You already know that that's something that may get angry about a lot easier. Or maybe it's not as much about honesty. Maybe it's punctuality. Someone shows up late to a meeting. Doesn't matter what reason, but they showed up late. And that makes you feel very anxious, right? For me, I love getting to the airport super early, just in case anything happens. And my wife's like, nah, we can get there just in time. I'm like, oh man, those things make me nervous. I don't enjoy that, right? What are all the things that maybe you believe are impending threat to your safety? This one's a little bit easier, right? What are the things that you've dealt with, and especially if you're in an area where there is physical harm possible, such as like a construction area, right? Some of us work in the oil and gas and energy area, and there is that threat and that emotions of like, if we're not doing things right, something bad could happen, right? That gets you very amped up, right? What are those areas? And probably the last one, and I'm going to say it, your emotional damage, right? When all of the history of something that has happened to you, maybe inside of your work, how you've raised, that have caused you to be able to respond very heavily or overreact to certain things, right? Based off of some past experience that you've had with someone else, that you've had with your family, or maybe had with another employer, right? Do you know what those emotions are? And do you know what those driving experiences are? Right? So go ahead, take a little bit of time right now and just maybe write them down. Because it's one thing to be able to go and think about it, but if we talk about our self awareness, it's being able to actually know. And as soon as you put it on paper, you start to go and understand it a little bit more. And this is where some people feel like, well, I can go and work through these conversations through AI. I'll just type in my conversation and say, how should I react? How should I behave? How should I respond to this email? And it can be a great pointer and tips of, let's say, the typical solution. But it doesn't actually help you internally because this is where AI will fail you because it doesn't know your story. It doesn't know your values. It doesn't know possibly the emotional damage that you've been through in the past that you're trying to go and work through. Because guess what? ChatGPT, AI is not always going to be there right when you need it. And so being able to go and practice a lot of this self awareness will give you better awareness of what are the areas that I need to be aware of. All right. So feel free to go and write them down. I'll give a little bit of time to be able to do that. If anybody wants to go and share, by all means, raise your hand, come off mute, and you can share a quick story. But I think for me, like one of my big ones is honesty, right? And that's coupled very closely with integrity of saying what you do, doing what you say. And I found that as I started to move up into larger leadership roles, and sometimes people wouldn't get some of those pieces that they said they would have done, or they wouldn't deliver, right? I found myself getting very irritated by this. And I had one bad instance with another coworker where I was about to go into Mexico for a week and we had a report due for the client that was supposed to be done after, basically, it was due after I came back. Now, I'd assigned this task to a junior and I went through as much as possible of here's what each section needs to do the research on this one, put it all together, put it onto the document. And so that when I come in, we can at least present them with a working draft to be able to go and present to our client. Next week rolls around, Monday rolls around, and I have a quick meeting with them, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, how far did we get on it? Nothing done. Absolutely nothing. There was nothing added to what I provided them. I'm not sure they even opened the document. And this was in a slightly public area where I just said, what are you doing? I don't understand what your problem is, all those type of things, right? And in my mind, I felt justified to be able to go and do it. But it probably wasn't the best execution of my emotional intelligence in that area, right? Even the decision to say, hey, can I pull you aside to go and talk to you about it and whatnot, right? And even the other things of timing that my status meeting with a client was at 9:30 in the morning. And so even with that time gap, I was like panicking because I didn't have anything to go and present to them. And it's already been a week. How would that look? How would I feel about that? Right. And so those pieces around where my beliefs and values, where it didn't align, started to go and really trigger me a lot to be able to, I would say to an extent, overreact on some of these instances. All right. So hopefully you've had a chance to be able to write that down. Now I want you to go through some of the exercises of detection. And I'm going to tell you this. You might not believe me right now, but follow along. I hope you are able to go through this and hopefully build your spidey sense because we all have spidey senses. You just don't know it yet. All right. So the first part is understanding the emotions that you're feeling, right? Now, how many of you have heard of the emotion wheel? If you've been to, I don't know, any kind of counselors or things like that, sometimes they usually have that. As an Asian, mine usually just fits in that orange area of just angry. Anything that happens, I'm angry. Sometimes I'll be happy, I suppose, but more than often than not, if it's a negative thing, I'll show up as angry. But then there's so many areas that it's divided into to be able to understand, well, what is that exact emotion that I'm feeling? Because angry is very broad and it's actually a secondary emotion. It's driven by something else. So when you are feeling something, what is it that you feel? And this is where the emotion wheel is very helpful to be able to pinpoint what that is that you're feeling because it really helps you to name it so that you can go and tame it. You can understand your emotion so that then you understand what you're dealing with. If it's too broad, you might go about administering it, trying to go and remedy it in the wrong way, right? And that's what we don't want to go and have happen. So being excluded, is it excluded because you're feeling deserted or forsaken? They're very similar words, but they can have very different meaning for you. So as you go through it, is when you have a strong emotion, what exactly is that emotion that you're feeling? All right. So now here's the fun thing where we can take a look at your spidey sense. And it might be hard for some of you because this is going to tap into some of your past experiences and whatnot. But can you think of a time where you felt a very strong emotion? Maybe it's anger, maybe it's disappointment, embarrassment, right? What was that emotion? Okay, so think of that situation first and think about what that emotion was. And what was the circumstance around it, right? What was the circumstance around it? Did it conflict around your values? Was it something somebody did for you? Did you feel like it was malicious? Whatever it might be, right? What was the circumstance? And so here's the key piece is what did your body feel like? Here's the funny thing for me anyway, is that when I feel like I did something wrong or I'm embarrassed, I can feel kind of my stomach drop, right? I can feel my stomach drop. It feels like that weird butterfly feeling and everything drops. But if I feel like that I'm very angry instead, I can actually feel my pinky finger twitching. It kind of rattles around a little bit. Why? Because a lot of that adrenaline is pumping through my body so hard. And I can feel that tension in it, and my hands will start to shake a little bit. And so, funny enough, if you think about those different instances, your body is telling you that's your spidey sense. Your body is telling you an emotion that you're feeling. And so sometimes you might not be able to pinpoint that feeling right away. You might not be able to say, oh man, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit deserted right now. Or maybe it's forsaken. I'm not too sure. Let me think about that, right? But your body will already start to respond to some of these things. Maybe even like your like real spidey sense, right? The hairs on your arms will start to go and stand up a little bit, whatever that might be. But as you start to go and think about these instances, as you start to think about how your body is reacting to it, that's your physiological reaction of your limbic system being able to go and exhibit that something is being dysregulated, something is going on. And if you can pay attention to that, that's your first area to go and detect what is going on with your body before you're even naming the emotion, right? Is that something's going on, danger, danger, right? Yeah, what are we seeing here? Yeah, Darius, his left eye twitches. Yeah, you can feel that heart rate increasing or your ears ringing when you have intense emotions, right? Because those are all the things that your body is doing to tell you something's wrong. Something is going to happen, right? So I encourage that if you can do that body scan, hopefully in a not right away, but you can do it when you're thinking about it and contemplating. It gives you an, I'd say, an archive. It gives you a list of all the things you have to notice when you might need to have a heightened sense of emotional intelligence to handle what's coming up next. So we move from self-awareness and now we've moved into detection. And now the last part, action, I'm going to kind of go over at a very high level. But I'll say that the first part is looking at control. How do you control your reactions and your emotions? So once you detect it, you're feeling your blood pumping, your heart rate is racing, your left eye is twitching, your pinky is kind of going wonky, right? All of those type of things. How are you going to control it? How do you manage your emotions? And the next piece is then think. How are you thinking? How are you engaging? What's opinions? What are facts? Are you listening? Are you thinking about what the empathy portion is? And basically, it's trying to understand how are you going to move from that emotional state inside of your limbic system to go and move into your prefrontal cortex, where you can go and engage that thinking, where you can understand, am I being biased? Am I exercising that critical thinking for us to then hopefully take action? So your CTA is control, thinking, action. And I know it's kind of weird, action to action, but these are the three areas that you can then use about how am I going to make sure that this emotion doesn't create something that is a larger problem for me to then have to deal with. And here's the thing, I'm not going to necessarily prescribe this cure all for you because there's difficulty in how it lays out in terms of your context of your situation, who you are, what your values are, how things are happening out. Because it'd be nice to just say, you know what, all you need to do is do some box breathing, right? Go and just take some deep breaths and do that for a few minutes and things like that. Yeah, is that going to work so well in an in-person confrontation? Do you have that time? It might be easier if you get a text or an email with bad news or somebody telling you something wrong. Or what if it's a VP or someone that's from a C-suite executive versus someone that's working for you, someone that's on your project team, right? All of those things are very different in how those situations are handled and as well as how emotionally charged you might be, right? And I guess out of all of this, I'm not going to tell you to calm down. How many of you have ever, when you're angry and someone tells you to calm down, you actually calm down? That's usually something that doesn't happen very often. I know it doesn't work with my wife. But if anything, that's why these exercises here are to go and help you understand what your emotional intelligence state looks like before so that you can prepare, so that you don't have to go and tell someone to just calm down. So hopefully through this, we've been able to walk through this a little bit more where you can understand, how emotional intelligence can have a significant impact on your team as well as your reputation of how others see you. And you can understand that, hey, our brains aren't wired for strong EQ. It's not there all naturally. There's areas where we have to go and practice it. And that's where our limbic system kicks in before our neocortex. And so if we want to be able to overcome this in a manner where we're not stressed out about it as much and we're not reacting and instead we're taking thoughtful action, then we have to know ourselves. We have to know thyself, your past, your mind, your emotions, and even your body, right? What is the spidey sense that you have? How does that work? And understanding that work will allow you to be able to respond more appropriately. And hopefully, this will lead us to be able to develop more ways for us to control and think so you can create the best action for yourself. Because all in all of these things coming together, this is only just a small part of leadership because leadership is hard. Anyone that tells you that being a leader is easy, that all you're doing is just telling people what to do, nah, it is hard. And so, as well, give yourself some grace that you can learn, you can go and practice some of these things. You can go and be able to go and discover more about yourself that you're not going to be perfect all the time. I have made mistakes as well, even in the most recent areas, right? Like I'll tell you, sometimes my kids drive me up the wall with things where I'm like, man, I really should have practiced a little bit more emotional intelligence on that, but I also wish that my kid didn't break my television. How should I have behaved, right? Things like that. And so now I'll move into talking a little bit more about Project Apex and why I created this, because I know that leadership is hard. I want people to have that space to be able to go and learn and to be able to go and practice. And that's where, for me, it's all about helping people build that capability, that clarity, that confidence to be able to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, and being able to go and practice that. Because so many project managers, when we're thrown into those areas, and especially if you're accidental, you're not trained in it, you can set yourself up for failure. And that's not a great feeling either. Because in a quick Gallup study, and this is back in 2016, 1 in 10 naturally possess a talent to manage others effectively. 1 in 10. And that means the other nine of us, we are absolutely just winging it. We're just trying to go and figure out what works, what doesn't. And a lot of us get burned, right? I see that a lot, especially from technical project managers. They're trying to go and work with more people, and they don't understand sometimes when it comes in with people from marketing, people from legal, people from accounting all coming in. And all of a sudden, they have trouble interacting with their now cross matrix team, right? So you might be wondering, well, why Project Apex? Well, for me, I came out as a management consulting area where I found that project management was kind of secondary to everything. It was kind of more just bill as much as you can. Let's do and just keep working. If it goes longer, that's okay because we're getting paid for it. So don't worry about it. And for me, that didn't really sit right. I love being able to go and make sure that I was delivering value to the clients. That if I could finish it in 2 hours, even if I had eight, that I get it done in two, and then we'd figure it out how else could I add value with the additional 6 hours. And funny enough, with my management consulting career, I went in so many different industries and so many different type of projects, right? Everything varying from agrochemical, oil and gas, government, startups. Some of them were directly into software, right? All of these type of different industries. And then within that, there's things like setting up, logistics for supply chain, being able to go and work with C-suite strategic planning, business process improvement, software delivery, software implementations, all these type of different projects, which was interestingly enough gave me a lot of different areas where I could find an interesting cross pollination between all of them. But what I really then noticed was that people would call me in to fix their projects, the projects that were on fire. And I was kind of like, why are you asking me? I don't I don't have any subject matter expertise in your area. Why do you want me to go and help you with that? But they noticed something that maybe even I didn't notice at the time is just being able to go and knit all of these different groups together and helping them perform. Being able to learn quickly and then helping them organize themselves, coordinate themselves so that they are able to go and deliver. And as I continue to go and do more of these, I kind of and was asking myself, well, why? Why am I successful? Because arguably, I should be less successful than the previous project manager that I'm replacing. So there's really two questions that drove me around it. One was, what are the skills, behaviors, tools that help me be successful in projects? But I think the more important question was, where was the support for the previous project manager so that they didn't have to call me? It'd be great if I could clone myself, but you know what? I would rather be able to enable more project managers, to enable more project leaders to be able to go and deliver better. So, how do we build better project leaders? So, in the end, I want to superpower more project managers. I want to be able to help them understand beyond just the technical skills, of Gantt charts, critical path, of having scrum ceremonies, all of those type of things. What are the type of thinking and mindset pieces as well as actions that will help drive them to be successful, not only for their project management career, but into the future for the long game, that they could go into anything, whether they want to be a C-suite operations executive, whether they want to get promoted, whether they want to even go and network and find that other job, that they have all the skills to be able to go and make that happen. So with the coaching, I know there's sometimes a lot of myths sticking out there, right? One is it's only for executives. You hear executives getting executive coaching. But you know what? I view it as one is you're a PM. You're probably the C. You can think of yourself as the CEO of your project. So why shouldn't you go and get that coaching anyway? And if anything, any coaching is applicable for anyone, so long as you have the right mindset around it, that you're able to go and say, yeah, I'm going to put in the work for it. And some of you might have had the other type of experience with coaching where you think it's a bunch of baloney. What am I doing here for coaching, right? You're going to go and tell me a bunch of things. I'm going to have to go and buy a bunch of crystals or something like that. Maybe it's amethyst, and you're going to go and look at my birth sign or something like that. What is this? And I'd say coaching is about introspective solution development, right? Some people have coaching and they don't really understand what it is. And so when we talk about the peer coaching, it's about introspective solution development. And when we look at it versus consulting or mentoring, it's really looking at how are you guiding yourself through that solution development. So it's not just utilizing your past, it's not doing it for you, where consulting is doing it for you or providing you advice. It's asking you deeper questions so that you can think of what the right solution is for you. Because ultimately, the answers that you create are going to be more powerful than any advice I can go and give you. Because you're going to be committed, you're going to own it, and you're going to be able to go and know that it's going to work for you based on your situation, based on your context. And so, really, I want to try and move a lot more project managers out of this space, this negative space of being alone, stuck, frustrated, overwhelmed, so that you are confident, resilient, strategic, and more thoughtful in how you deliver. So, we look at who this is for. Typically, I'm looking for somebody in, if you want to join Project Apex, you are 1 to 8 years into your project management journey. You might have your certifications, but really to me, that's optional. So long as you're in a space where you feel like you're applying your project management skills and you want to reach that next level of leadership for your project and career. So you want to act like the leader, you want to be seen as the leader, you want to be known as the leader. And so this isn't project management certification. I'm not here to get your PMP. I'm not here to necessarily find you your job or transition into PM, but I want to help you play that long game. I want you to be that project manager that is known for being that leader that they want on their team. So part of it here is, well, what exactly is it? How is it structured? So we work through a bit around goal setting, and there's education as well as the coaching loop here, where we work on building your insight, your action and outcomes, and I work with you to build that accountability. And if you're wondering what APEX stands for, well, it's awareness, your power skill crafting, execution, and being able to excel with all of those different areas. So again, we start off with the one-on-one goal development and coaching, the leadership intensive boot camp, where it's going to be instructional and providing what I feel is the foundational basis for a lot of leadership discussions and actions that you can go and take. And then it's followed on with biweekly group coaching, where work with you and the cohort to work through the situations, understand your situations, and see what solutions you can go and develop. So when we look at the goal development and coaching, it's understanding your context, what your goals are, and mapping out what that achievement looks like. And that's about 90 minutes. But if you're going to apply into my program for this initial cohort, I'm adding another 60 minutes, 2 60-minute sessions for you of one-on-one coaching for your area. And for the leadership intensive bootcamp, it's again looking at that foundational power skills of leadership. What are the things that drive the mindset, critical thinking, and personal development for you, which will come with open discussion, Q&A, and exercises. Now, there's a lot of different topics that we're going to be covering, from personal productivity, mindset, communication, how to develop slide decks, things like that, conflict resolution, creative problem solving, a lot of different areas, right, that we all have listed here. Team culture crafting, influence building, even the pieces around brand building and public speaking. And that is looking to be right now. I said it's about 6 hours, but with all the amount of topics, it could be even longer. And I may be creating special things for areas where you, as an initial cohort, as founders, can provide areas where you want me to go and talk a little bit more. And I'd be happy to go and build out those areas so that you can get value out of them. And the last one is the biweekly coaching, where it's a hot seat coaching, but it also comes with accountability checks that every 2 weeks you work through what actions you want to go and take inside of your career or your job or the specific project you're in right now. And the accountability check is saying, did you do it? Did you have the results that you expected? What were the results? And if you didn't do it, why? Why didn't you work on it? Why didn't you do the things that you felt were going to help you be successful? Because might be other mindset blocks that are resulting in you not being able to take some additional steps. This is also with facilitate open discussion and learning, where it's a safe space for you to be able to ideate, to be able to think, to be able to go and work with others and come up with solutions for yourself. And that means then action planning. So I'm somewhat project managing the project manager, but from a biweekly perspective, it goes on for about 4 months for us to work through that. And really, this first cohort starting up in 2026, I'm limited out to 10 spots. The first investment is only $2,400 with a monthly investment. If you want to go and shift it to a monthly payment, is $690. If you're one of the first three, you can use this coupon code where it's $200 off. But really, I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. So if you want to take note of this link here, and I'll drop it into the chat, we can have a quick conversation about it just to understand, is there the right fit for you? Do you think this is something that'll help drive what you want inside of your career, inside of your project, inside of where you want to go? So there might be additional bonuses to come still that I'm working with other creators to be able to bring in. But in the end, really, I don't want you to feel like that this is another training, because this is really working with you on things that you want to go and improve on, that you feel are going to drive you to success for yourself, for your career, and where you want to go and head into. So, with that, I just want to thank all of you for being able to go and join me today for this masterclass on emotional damage to emotional intelligence. Hopefully, you've learned a thing or two. Maybe you've learned a little bit more about your own EQ spidey sense. And I'd really encourage you that if you are even just have a thought of this could be for me, then schedule that call. There's no obligation on it. It's just to go and discuss and understand a little bit more about where you want to go and answer any questions you might have about the program, whether it be about structure, topics, whatever it might be. I'm more than happy to go and answer it. So thank you so much for being able to go and join. And with that, I'll kind of open it up to Q&A for the rest of the group here, that if you have questions or thoughts either about EQ or Project Apex, that you can feel free to go raise your hand and ask them. Yeah, thanks so much. I see a lot of people there. They're about to jump off here, but thank you so much for attending. Hopefully it was valuable to you. All right. Or anyone else that wants to just make chit chat. I know some people weren't able to go and make this masterclass, but this will be recorded, so I'll be sending out the link to you where you can go and watch it in your own time if you're not able to go and watch this one. So, yeah. Any other thoughts, any comments? Anyone have any other thoughts about their own spidey sense?
This is Amy. I was
Hi,
going to say
Amy.
that I'm always immediately able to understand what I'm feeling and why. I'm very, very good at that. And I'm a person who just freezes
Yeah.
because I need to think and take time to, because I recognize it, I then kind of need to process it and decide what's the best response. And I've also often found through time that not responding is often the best response.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, right? Because sometimes if you don't respond,
But
people will make up their own stories about why you didn't respond or something like that, right?
that
Which,
can happen too. So I
yeah.
mean, so my big issue is I'm always glad in the cases where it's triggered anger and I have not, or some sort of more guttural response within me and I've not responded. So in all those cases. And other cases where it's another emotion like humiliation
Mhm.
or feeling left out or I'm suddenly concerned about something. So my issue is of I don't then know how to respond, or I'm just I don't have good techniques to be a great responder. So
Mhm.
that's where I feel my emotional cue is it's not identifying it, it's the opposite. It's now creating the right
Action.
package of responses and actions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes if you're able to identify what those emotions are that get you to freeze a little bit more, it's maybe you have canned ones that you go to, right? Around it of, here's what I'm going to say around that. It's like, let me take a look, think about that, and I'll get back to you. Even saying something sometimes can be better than nothing, right? Unless that's nothing. And this is where, from a context perspective, it's always hard because I could provide you advice on how to be able to go and do it. And you're like, well, that didn't work very well. But when you understand more about your context or situation, and that's where, I'd love to go and work with people on that, is then what works for you? What works inside of that context and that situation so that you can create that, I'll say, best level of success you can have inside of that area. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Amy. All right. Anyone else? Well, if not, because I'm going to give the pause here. If you don't have anything else, I'd wish you like a great evening. Happy to go and share more information with you. I will be having probably one more masterclass looking at planning your 2026 and why New Year's resolutions suck. So you can look out for that one coming up probably in mid-December or so before everyone leaves out for holidays. That one's usually a fun one I do every year with people to work through their planning and why New Year's resolutions are always bad. I can go in my soapbox there, but it'll be a fun and interesting conversation. So again, if you have any kind of questions on EQ or the Project Apex program, how it will work, all the details around it, feel free to let me know. And again, you can go and contact me on the through that link there to be able to set up a time that works, and happy to have the conversation with you. So it's always great being able to connect with the community here. And again, if you want to go and drop your LinkedIn profile in there to connect with others on the call here, be my guest. Happy to go and entertain that. And if nothing else, have a wonderful evening.